I drove to my lake house for the weekend and walked in on my son-in-law with his mistress in our bedroom. He dropped to his knees, begging, "Don't tell Sophie. She's pregnant. I'll do anything, anything at all." I calmly nodded once and made one single call. Not to my daughter, to his banker at Pacific Union. In seconds, his face went ghost white. He realized that call had just triggered the total collapse of his fake empire. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. My name is Orval Montgomery. I'm 64 years old, and I split my time between Reno and my house on Lake Tahoe. Spent 38 years as a corporate controller for a construction company before I retired 2 years ago. I always believed you could trust family above everything else. Turns out I was naive. My daughter Sophie is 36 now. She's a pediatric nurse at renowned regional medical center, works the day shift, comes home exhausted but still smiling. That's who she is. Bright, caring, sees the good in everyone. Maybe too much good. 4 years ago, she married Justin Caldwell, and from day one, something about him didn't sit right with me. Justin's the kind of guy who walks into a room and owns it within 5 minutes. Tall, well-dressed, perfect teeth, handshake firm enough to make a point, but not aggressive. Charismatic. Started his own commercial real estate development company 3 years back. Built it up fast, or so he claimed. Every family dinner, he'd talk about his latest deal, his newest investor, how the business was exploding. Sophie would beam at him like he'd hung the moon. But I've spent 4 decades looking at financial statements. You develop a sense for when numbers don't add up, even in casual conversation. Justin would mention closing a deal for $2 million, then the next week casually reference an office expansion that should have cost at least half that. Yet somehow he still had cash for a new Porsche Cayenne. The math never quite worked. When I'd probe gently, ask about financing structures or debt ratios, he'd deflect with charm. "Orval, you worry too much. Business is good. Trust me." I didn't trust him, but Sophie loved him, and that's what mattered. I kept my mouth shut and watched. The changes started subtle, about a year into the marriage. Justin began making excuses why they couldn't visit me at the lake house anymore. Too busy with work, important clients to schmooze, networking events. Sophie would apologize on his behalf, eyes a little dimmer each time. Then came the comments. Little digs at family dinners, carefully wrapped in jokes. "Orval's old school, babe. Doesn't understand how modern business works." Or my personal favorite. "Your dad's generation, they punched a clock for 40 years. We're building empires." Sophie would laugh nervously, touch his arm, change the subject. I'd smile and let it slide. Pick your battles, right? Last month, Sophie called me with news that made my chest tight. She was pregnant, 17 weeks along. Her voice trembled with joy, and I heard Justin in the background, saying all the right things about being a father, about their future. I congratulated them both, hung up, and sat in silence for an hour. Something felt wrong. I couldn't name it, but it gnawed at me. 2 weeks ago, I'd planned to drive up to the lake house for the weekend, scheduled for Sunday afternoon, give me time to prep the boat for spring. But Thursday night, I couldn't sleep. The restlessness got to me around midnight. I threw some clothes in a bag, left a note for Sophie in case she called, and drove up Friday morning instead. The drive to Lake Tahoe usually calms me. Watching Reno fade in the rear view, the climb into the pines, that first glimpse of blue water through the trees, it's meditation. But that morning, my hands gripped the wheel tighter than usual. I told myself it was just pregnancy nerves. First grandchild. New chapter. Everything was fine. I pulled up to 1840 Lakeshore Boulevard around 2 in the afternoon. March in Tahoe still has snow on the peaks, but the house sits low enough that the driveway was clear. Justin's black Cayenne was parked out front, which struck me as odd. He never came up here. Always claimed he was too busy. Maybe he'd surprised Sophie with a romantic getaway? The thought should have warmed me. Instead, my stomach dropped. I used my key, stepped inside. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the heating system I'd left on low. Then I heard it, a woman's laugh from upstairs. Light, flirtatious, echoing down from the master bedroom on the second floor. But it wasn't Sophie's laugh. I know my daughter's voice like I know my own heartbeat. This was someone else. I stood in the entryway, my overnight bag still in hand, and listened. Another laugh. A man's voice, Justin's, low and playful. My first instinct was to charge up those stairs, but 38 years of controlling financial chaos taught me something valuable. Never make a move without information. I set down my bag, quietly. Started up the stairs, each step careful, deliberate. The voices got clearer. Her, "You said your father-in-law never comes up during the week. Him, he doesn't. Relax, we've got the whole weekend." I reached the top of the stairs. The master bedroom door was half open. I could see movement inside, shadows against the afternoon light streaming through the windows. My hand touched the door, pushed it wide. Justin froze. He was standing by the bed in his undershirt and slacks, and next to him was a woman I'd never seen before. Late 20s, blonde, wearing one of my daughter's robes. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Justin's face went from shocked to pale to something like calculation. The woman, whoever she was, grabbed her clothes and darted past me into the hallway bathroom. I heard the lock click. Justin stood there, and I watched him cycle through his options in real time. His mouth opened, closed. Finally, "Orval, it's not what you think." I said nothing, just looked at him. Sometimes silence is the sharpest tool you own. "Listen," he continued, voice picking up speed, desperation creeping in. "Sophie can't know about this. She's pregnant, Orval. 17 weeks. The stress, it could hurt the baby. You don't want that, right? You don't want to hurt your own grandchild." Using my grandchild as a shield. Smart. Disgusting, but smart. He kept talking, hands up, like he was calming a wild animal. "I made a mistake. One mistake. It won't happen again, I swear. Whatever you want, Orval. Money? Money," I repeated, my first word since walking in. It came out flat, emotionless. "Yes!" His eyes lit up with hope. "I can pay you. Name a price. 50,000? 100? Whatever keeps this between us, please." He stepped closer, and that's when I saw it. Papers on the nightstand, half hidden under his phone. Bank logo. Pacific Union Bank. I leaned past him, picked them up. Credit application. Justin Michael Caldwell. Loan amount requested, $2,400,000. Collateral listed, mixed commercial properties, and I scanned down. Residential property at 1840, Lakeshore Boulevard, Lake Tahoe, NV. My house. My house was listed as collateral. I looked up at Justin. His face had gone from desperate to terrified. "You used my property," I said quietly, "to secure a loan?" No, that's just preliminary. They wanted to see potential assets. I wasn't actually going to—" "Get dressed," I interrupted. "You and your friend have 10 minutes to get out of my house." "Orval, please." 10 minutes, or I call the police for trespassing." "Your choice." I walked out, went downstairs, sat at my kitchen table, listened to frantic movement above, the woman rushing out, Justin's voice low and urgent, then the sound of the Cayenne starting up and gravel spraying as he peeled out. Silence returned to the house. I looked at the papers in my hand. Really looked. Credit application, financial statements for Caldwell Commercial Properties, LLC, profit and loss statements, balance sheets. I pulled out my phone, opened the photos I'd taken last year when I'd quietly requested copies of Justin's company filings from the Nevada Secretary of State website. Call it due diligence. Call it a father's paranoia. The numbers didn't match, not even close. According to these bank documents, Justin's company grossed $4.7 million last year, with a net profit of $890,000. According to the state filings, the gross was $1.38 million with a net of $67,000. He'd inflated his revenue by 340%. On the balance sheet for the bank, he'd listed assets of $3.2 million. The state filing showed $1.1 million, and that included outstanding debts of $670,000 that somehow didn't appear on the bank version at all. This wasn't optimistic accounting. This was fraud. Federal bank fraud. I sat there as the sun moved across the lake, turning the water from blue to silver to gold. My phone buzzed twice, Sophie asking if I'd made it to the house okay. I texted back, "All good, sweetheart. Resting up. Love you." The lie tasted bitter. Memories came in waves. Sophie at 8 years old, sitting at this same kitchen table, her mother teaching her to make pancakes. Sophie at 16, crying over her first heartbreak, and I'd held her and promised that someday she'd find someone worthy. Sophie at 32, radiant in her wedding dress, looking at Justin like he was everything. What had I missed? When had he started deceiving her? Had it always been there, just hidden under that charm? I thought about confronting Sophie directly, showing her the evidence, exposing Justin immediately. But she was 17 weeks pregnant, glowing with hope for her future, for her child's future. That kind of revelation doesn't just hurt, it shatters. I'd seen it in my work, employees whose spouses were embezzling, the way the truth broke them. Number Sophie deserved better than a brutal awakening. She deserved the truth, yes, but delivered in a way that protected her, that gave her solid ground to stand on when everything else crumbled. And Justin deserved exactly what he'd earned. I've never been an impulsive man. My career was built on finding discrepancies, tracing problems to their source, building airtight cases for audits. I understood systems, consequences, leverage. Justin thought he was clever, using my house, lying to banks, playing my daughter for access to legitimacy and connections. He'd built his little empire on falsified documents and charm. Numbers don't lie. People do. And numbers always win in the end. I picked up my phone again, scrolled through my contacts. Found the name I needed. Nathan Cross, the attorney who'd handled my estate planning last year. Sent him a message. Need to discuss a sensitive family matter. Client confidentiality essential. Available Monday? His reply came in 5 minutes. Monday, 9 a.m. My office. Then I made a list. What I knew, what I needed to know, what I needed to prove. The affair was one thing, painful but survivable. The financial fraud was another. That was criminal. That was leverage. That was how you dismantled someone methodically. Justin would panic. He'd try to fix this, cover his tracks, maybe even confess to Sophie on his own terms to control the narrative. I needed to move faster than his fear, smarter than his desperation. The sun set over the lake, painting the sky in shades of amber and purple. I thought about my granddaughter or grandson growing inside Sophie right now, innocent of all this ugliness. That child deserved a father who was honest, or at least a mother who knew the truth and could choose her path with clear eyes. I stood up, walked to my workshop out back. My current project sat on the workbench, a 1967 Chris Craft Constellation stripped down to bare wood, waiting for restoration. I ran my hand along the hull, patience, precision. Every board measured twice, every joint tested. You can't rush quality work. Justin had rushed, cut corners, thought no one would check. I smiled for the first time since arriving at the lake house. It wasn't a warm smile. He'd forgotten something crucial. I'd spent 38 years checking numbers. Finding discrepancies was what I did best. And unlike the companies I'd audited, unlike the executives who'd tried to hide their mistakes, Justin had made this personal. He'd betrayed my daughter, used my home, lied to my face. Monday morning, the real work would begin. Not revenge. I'm too old for petty revenge. This was something purer. This was justice delivered through the only language I'd ever truly trusted. Mathematics, evidence, consequences. Justin wanted to play in the big leagues, wanted to be a mogul. Fine. Let's see how he handles a real audit. The following Monday morning, I drove back to Reno. Sophie called around 10, asking if I'd had a nice weekend at the lake. Her voice was light, happy. I could hear her smile through the phone. Peaceful, I told her. Very enlightening, she laughed. You and that old boat. I swear you love that workshop more than people. Some things are worth the investment of time, I said. How are you feeling? Baby treating you okay? Oh, Dad, I'm glowing. Justin says I've never looked more beautiful. He's being so sweet lately. Brings me breakfast in bed, rubs my feet. I think becoming a father is really changing him. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. That's wonderful, sweetheart. After we hung up, I drove straight past my house and headed to an office building on South Virginia Street. 3rd floor, corner suite. The nameplate read, Gloria Vasquez, Private Investigations and Financial Forensics. I'd met Gloria 3 years back at a financial compliance seminar. former IRS criminal investigator, 22 years tracking tax fraud and money laundering before she went private. Sharp as a scalpel and twice as precise. If anyone could document Justin's activities without leaving fingerprints, it was her. She looked up when I walked in, mid-40s, dark hair pulled back, reading glasses perched on her nose. Orville Montgomery, didn't expect to see you. Thought you were enjoying retirement. Turns out retirement has some complications, I said, closing the door behind me. I need your help with a sensitive matter, family issue. Her expression shifted to professional interest. I'm listening. I laid out the situation, not the affair itself. That felt too raw to speak aloud yet, but the financial aspects. My son-in-law possibly using my property as collateral without permission. Suspicious discrepancies in business filings. A pattern I wanted documented. I need to know what he's really doing, I said. Where he goes, who he sees, what he spends. Financial trail, movement patterns, the works. Can you do it without him knowing? Gloria leaned back in her chair. How thorough do you want me to be? Thorough enough that if this ends up in court, the documentation is airtight. She named her rate, $200 an hour plus expenses. I didn't blink. Wrote her a check for $5,000 as a retainer. She'd start surveillance that afternoon. Back home, I went to my study and opened the safe I kept in the closet. Inside were files I'd maintained over the years, copies of Justin's business registration documents, tax returns he'd shared when buying their house, financial statements from loan applications. Call it paranoia, but when your daughter marries someone, you keep tabs. Make sure he's stable, capable, honest. I spread everything across my desk next to the documents Justin had left at the lake house, started comparing line by line. The truth jumped out immediately. Last year's actual tax return showed Caldwell, commercial properties with gross revenue of $1.38 million and net income of $67,000. Not bad for a young company, but modest. The bank application claimed $4.7 million gross and $890,000 net. The balance sheet was even worse. Assets inflated by millions, liabilities mysteriously absent. He hadn't just exaggerated, he'd fabricated an entirely different company. I sat back, feeling something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't creative accounting or optimistic projections. This was systematic fraud, federal crime, the kind that puts you in prison for years, destroys careers, ruins families. And he'd done it while married to my daughter, while building a life with her, while getting her pregnant. That evening, Sophie texted asking if I wanted to join them for dinner. Justin was grilling steaks, she said. Family time. I almost declined, but then thought better of it. Better to see him. Watch how he moves now that he knows I know. Study the performance. Their house in South Reno was a 3-bedroom ranch style. Nice, but not extravagant. Justin's Cayenne sat in the driveway, still spotless. I parked my truck behind it and walked to the front door. Justin answered, wearing an apron that said Grill Master. His smile looked painted on. Orval, great to see you. Come in, come in. Justin, I shook his hand, held it a beat longer than necessary, watched his eyes. He flinched, just slightly, almost imperceptible. But I saw it. Sophie appeared from the kitchen, radiant in a blue dress that accommodated her growing belly. She hugged me tight. Dad, I'm so glad you came. I feel like we haven't seen you enough lately. Been busy, I said. You look beautiful, princess. Dinner was uncomfortable in the way that only forced normalcy can be. Justin overcompensated. Too jovial, too attentive to Sophie, too eager to fill silences with talk about the weather, the Aces season, local restaurant openings. Anything but business. Anything but substance. I watched him cut his steak with slightly trembling hands. Watched him drink his wine a little too fast. Watched him glance at me when he thought I wasn't looking, trying to read my intentions. Sophie, oblivious, chattered about baby names and nursery colors. She wanted something gender-neutral in case they decided to wait for a surprise. Maybe sage green or soft yellow. Justin agreed with everything she said, but I could see the sweat forming at his hairline despite the air conditioning. This steak is excellent, Justin, I said, my voice perfectly pleasant. Cooked to perfection. You really know how to enjoy success? He nearly choked on his wine, coughed, recovered. Thanks, Orval. I've been practicing. Practice makes perfect, I agreed, though I've always found that cutting corners catches up to you eventually, especially in business. Wouldn't you say? His face went pale. Sophie looked between us, confused. Dad, are you giving business advice? You know Justin's company is doing great. Tell him about that new project, honey. Justin's mouth opened, closed. It's in early stages. Don't want to jinx it. I smiled, raised my water glass in a mock toast. To success, however fleeting. The rest of dinner passed in quiet tension. I left around 9, thanked them both for the meal, kissed Sophie's forehead, shook Justin's clammy hand one more time. Drive safe, Orval, he said, voice tight. Oh, I always do, I replied. I'm very careful about following the rules, all of them. Back in my truck, I sat for a moment before starting the engine. Through their front window, I could see Justin pacing, phone to his ear, probably calling that woman. Probably panicking, wondering what I knew, what I'd do, how to contain this. Let him wonder. Let him sweat. The fear was just beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, Gloria's reports arrived like clockwork. Every morning, a new email. Photographs, timestamps, locations. Justin's patterns emerged with mathematical precision. Monday through Friday, he'd leave home around 8, reach his office in the Sierra Tower by 8:30. Normal. But then the deviations started. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, he'd leave at 2, drive to an apartment complex on South Street. 15 to 20 minutes inside. The blonde woman, Vanessa, according to Gloria's research, would be waiting. Wednesdays, he'd meet her at the pepper mill for lunch. They'd sit in a back booth, his hand on hers across the table. Very cozy, very intimate, like they had all the time in the world. Friday evenings were the longest visits. Sometimes he wouldn't leave the South Street apartment until 9 or 10 at night. Meanwhile, Sophie would text me, saying Justin was working late on a deal. Always a deal. Always business. Gloria's financial forensics were even more damning. She'd traced rental payments for the apartment, $3,200 a month, paid from a business account under consultant housing. Jewelry purchases at 3 different stores over the past 6 months, totaling nearly $14,000. Dinner receipts from places Justin never took Sophie. He was maintaining 2 lives and funding it all through a company built on fraudulent loan applications. I compiled everything into a single folder. Photographs, bank statements, receipts, timelines. The affair was one weapon. The fraud was another. Together, they painted a complete picture of who Justin Caldwell really was. But I needed legal confirmation before I acted. Needed to know I wasn't just being a vengeful father-in-law, but someone preventing a crime. Nathan Cross had been my estate planning attorney for 5 years. Early 60s, gray beard, 3-piece suits, and a reputation for thorough work. I called his office, set up a meeting, told his secretary it was urgent but confidential. His office occupied a restored Victorian on California Avenue. I arrived early on a Thursday morning, carrying 2 briefcases, one with Justin's fraudulent documents, one with the real filings. Nathan gestured me to a leather chair. Orval, your message sounded serious. It is? I laid out both briefcases' contents on his desk. I need to know the legal ramifications of what I'm looking at, and whether I have an obligation to report it. He put on his reading glasses, started going through the documents. His expression changed as he compared the tax returns to the bank applications, from curious to concerned to alarmed. These are from the same company? He asked. Same company. Same time period. Different numbers. Nathan set down the papers, removed his glasses. Orval, this is bank fraud. Federal crime under 18 U.S.C. Section 1344. If these loan applications were based on these falsified financial statements, and if the bank relied on them to make credit decisions, we're talking about serious prison time. Potentially 10 to 30 years, depending on the amounts involved. What if I reported it to the bank? Would I be liable for anything? Liable? No. In fact, you might have a legal obligation to report it, especially if your property is listed as collateral without your consent. That's fraud against you personally. He leaned forward. Who is this? My son-in-law. Nathan's face softened. Your daughter's husband. The one with the baby on the way. Yes. This will destroy him. You understand that. The moment the bank starts investigating, his whole house of cards collapses. Criminal charges, bankruptcy, public scandal. Sophie will be caught in the blast radius. I met his eyes. She's already in the blast radius. She just doesn't know it yet. But I'd rather she find out now, while she can still protect herself and her child, than 5 years from now, when the FBI shows up. Nathan nodded slowly. You want my professional opinion? Report it. To the bank first. They'll handle the internal investigation. If they confirm fraud, they'll involve federal authorities. Document everything. Keep copies. This kind of evidence doesn't lie. He slid a business card across the desk. This is the contact for my colleague who specializes in financial crimes defense. If Sophie needs representation during any proceedings. Family rates. I pocketed the card, shook his hand. Thanks, Nathan. Orval, whatever you decide to do, make sure you can live with it. Revenge has a way of haunting people. I paused at his office door. This isn't revenge, it's accounting. Numbers always balance in the end. I'm just making sure they add up correctly. That evening I met Sophie for lunch at her favorite cafe downtown. She'd suggested it that morning, wanting to catch up. I arrived first, ordered coffee, and waited. She walked in glowing, literally glowing, that pregnancy radiance people talk about. Her hand rested on her small bump as she waved, weaving through tables to reach me. Dad! She hugged me tight, then settled into her chair. I feel like I haven't seen you in forever. How's the boat restoration going? Slow but steady, I said. How are you? How's Junior treating you? Oh, I'm wonderful. Tired, but wonderful. Justin's been amazing. He keeps telling me to rest, not to stress about anything. He's handling everything. Her smile could have lit the room. Dad, I know you had your doubts about him. I know you thought he was too smooth, too ambitious. But I think becoming a father is changing him. He talks about the baby all the time, about being present, being a good dad, about building something stable for our family. My coffee tasted bitter. I set it down carefully. That's good to hear, Princess. And we've been picking names. If it's a girl, I love Lily. Lily Grace Montgomery Caldwell. Isn't that beautiful? It's perfect, I said softly. You'll be such a great grandfather. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand. I'm so lucky to have you both. My two favorite men. I looked at my daughter, 36 years old, brilliant nurse, loving person, completely deceived. She had no idea her husband was living a double life, no idea the father of her child was a fraud in every sense of the word, no idea that within weeks her entire world would implode. I could tell her right now, lay it all out. But she was 17 weeks pregnant, happy, healthy. The shock could hurt her, hurt the baby, and I needed more than my word against Justin's. I needed irrefutable proof. I needed the institutions to validate the truth, so she couldn't dismiss it as paranoia or manipulation. Sophie, I said carefully, you know I'll always protect you, no matter what, right? She smiled, confused. Of course, Dad, but I don't need protecting. I have Justin now. We're building our life together. I know, sweetheart, I know. We finished lunch talking about nursery furniture and pediatrician recommendations. I paid the bill, hugged her goodbye, watched her walk to her car. She waved from behind the wheel, still smiling. That night, I sat in my study, surrounded by evidence, Gloria's surveillance photos, the fraudulent bank documents, the real tax returns, Nathan's business card. My phone rested on the desk, silent, waiting. One call, that's all it would take. One call to Pacific Union Bank, to their commercial lending department. One call to set truth into motion, to let the numbers speak for themselves. I picked up the phone, set it down, picked it up again. Sophie's words echoed, I think becoming a father is changing him. No, he wasn't changing. He was just getting better at lying, and my daughter deserved better than a beautiful lie. I scrolled through my contacts, found the number Nathan had given me. Richard Pemberton, Senior Credit Manager at Pacific Union Bank. Available during business hours for fraud reports and verification issues. The phone felt heavy in my hand. Once I made this call, there was no taking it back. The dominoes would fall. Investigation, discovery, charges, collapse. Justin would lose everything. Sophie would be devastated. My grandchild would grow up with a father in prison. But if I didn't make the call, Sophie would spend years, maybe decades, married to a criminal. The fraud would eventually surface. It always does. And when it did, she'd be complicit by association, her nursing license potentially at risk, her child's future mortgaged to pay legal fees. I looked at the photo on my desk, Sophie at her college graduation, beaming in her cap and gown. I'd promised her mother before she died that I'd always protect our daughter, always keep her safe. Sometimes protection looks like cruelty. Sometimes love means pulling the foundation out from under the person you cherish most, because you know the foundation is rotten. I opened my email, started drafting a message to Richard Pemberton, detailed, factual, documented, attached scans of the relevant documents, typed my phone number at the bottom. My finger hovered over the send button. Then I thought of Justin's face at dinner, pale and sweating, his trembling hands, his panic barely concealed. He knew this was coming. Deep down, he'd known from the moment I walked in on him at the lake house. He'd bet everything that I'd stay quiet for Sophie's sake. He'd bet wrong. I pressed send. The email whooshed away into the digital void. Sent. Irretrievable. True. I sat back in my chair, feeling something settle in my chest. Not satisfaction, not quite. More like relief. The relief of a man who spent weeks carrying a heavy secret and finally set it down. The phone rang the next morning at 9:15. Unknown number. I answered. Mr. Montgomery? This is Richard Pemberton from Pacific Union Bank. I received your email regarding Justin Caldwell's loan applications. I'd like to discuss this matter further. Do you have time today? I have all the time in the world, Mr. Pemberton, I said. What would you like to know? The conversation with Richard Pemberton lasted 45 minutes. He was methodical, professional, asking specific questions about my property, when I'd discovered the unauthorized use, whether I had documentation proving the discrepancies. I answered each question clearly, without emotion, sticking to facts. Mr. Montgomery, you understand that what you're alleging is extremely serious, he said. If Mr. Caldwell did falsify financial statements to obtain credit, we're talking about federal bank fraud. I understand completely. That's why I'm bringing it to your attention rather than making accusations publicly. I assume your institution has procedures for investigating these matters internally. A pause. Then we do. I'll need you to send over everything you mentioned, the actual tax returns, the state filings, copies of the documents you found. Can you do that within the hour? I'll have them to you in 20 minutes. After we hung up, I scanned every document, organized them into a single PDF file with an index. Actual financial records in one section, Justin's falsified bank application in another, side-by-side comparison highlighting the discrepancies in a third. Sent it at 9:43. Pemberton's reply came back at 10:15. Received. Beginning internal review. We'll contact you within 48 hours. 2 days. That's all it would take for the dominoes to start falling. I went about my day normally, ran errands, stopped at the hardware store for sandpaper and varnish for the boat project, picked up groceries. My phone stayed silent until early evening when Sophie called. Dad, are you busy tomorrow night? Justin and I were thinking of ordering Chinese food. Maybe you could come over. I feel like we haven't seen enough of you lately. I'd love to, sweetheart. What time? 6:30? I'm craving that orange chicken from Golden Dragon. I'll bring dessert, I said. How are you feeling? Baby okay? Perfect. We had an ultrasound yesterday. Everything looks great. Doctor says I'm right on track. Her voice sparkled with happiness. Justin's been so sweet, Dad. Yesterday he brought home this huge pregnancy pillow because I mentioned my back was sore. He's really stepping up. I closed my eyes. That's wonderful, Princess. See you tomorrow. The next evening, 2 days after my call to Pemberton, my phone rang at 6:07. I was in my truck, driving to Sophie and Justin's place, the dessert from Whole Foods on the passenger seat. The caller ID showed Justin's cell number. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Orval, his voice cracked slightly. We need to talk, now. I'm on my way to your house for dinner. Can it wait 30 minutes? No, this can't. The bank called me this afternoon. Pacific Union. They've frozen my credit line. They want me to come in tomorrow morning for an emergency meeting about my loan application. They mentioned discrepancies in my financial documents. His breathing was rapid, panicked. Did you call them? Did you tell them something? I pulled into a gas station parking lot, put the truck in park, let the silence stretch. Orval, answer me. Did you call the bank? I provided Pacific Union with some information they requested, I said calmly. When a financial institution asks about property listed as collateral, citizens have an obligation to be truthful. You son of a... He caught himself. You can't do this. Sophie is pregnant with my child. If the bank pulls my financing, the whole company collapses. Is that what you want? To destroy your daughter's family? I want honest numbers, Justin. Something you apparently have trouble providing. This is about the lake house, isn't it? About seeing me with... Look, that was a mistake. A one-time thing. It's over. I swear it's over. One time? I almost laughed. Gloria Vasquez has documented 43 separate visits between you and Vanessa Price over the past 6 weeks, including the apartment you're renting for her at $3,200 a month, paid from a business account that's supposedly for consultant housing. Dead silence. I could hear his breathing, fast and shallow. You've been watching me, he finally whispered. You hired someone to follow me. I've been verifying information, making sure I understand the full picture before taking action. That's what prudent people do, Justin. They check their facts. What do you want? His voice had shifted from panic to something darker. Calculation. Money? Is this extortion? Because if you think... I want you at that bank meeting tomorrow, I interrupted. I want you to face the people you lied to. I want you to explain to them how a company with $67,000 in net income suddenly became a company with $890,000. I want you to account for the $670,000 in debts that mysteriously vanished from your balance sheet. You're destroying me. No, Justin, you destroyed yourself the moment you forged those documents. I'm just making sure the destruction is complete and properly documented. I hung up before he could respond, sat there for a moment, feeling the weight of what I'd set in motion. Then I started the truck and drove to their house. Sophie answered the door, glowing, wearing a loose blue dress that accommodated her growing belly. Dad, come in. The food just arrived. Justin stood in the living room, phone still in his hand, his face pale. When he saw me, something flickered in his eyes, rage mixed with fear, mixed with disbelief. Justin, honey, can you help me set the table? Sophie called from the kitchen. He didn't move, just stared at me. Justin? Sophie appeared in the doorway. Are you okay? You look pale. I'm fine, he managed. Just got off a work call. Stressful client. Dinner was excruciating. Sophie chattered about baby names and nursery colors while Justin pushed food around his plate, barely eating. His hands trembled slightly when he reached for his water glass. Every few minutes he'd glance at me, and I'd meet his gaze steadily, calmly. Sophie noticed eventually. Justin, you're barely eating. Are you feeling sick? Just tired. Big day tomorrow. Important meeting. Well, make sure you get some rest. She turned to me. Dad, tell Justin what you told me about compound interest for the baby's college fund. He needs to hear your wisdom. Some lessons, I said, looking directly at Justin. You can't learn from other people. You have to experience the consequences yourself. That's when real wisdom develops. Justin's fork clattered against his plate. He stood abruptly. Excuse me, I need to make a call. He disappeared into their bedroom. Sophie frowned. He's been so stressed lately. I'm worried about him. Some stress is self-inflicted, I said gently. All we can do is be there when people face the results of their choices. Later, driving home, my phone buzzed with a text from Justin. We're not done. You'll regret this. I deleted it without responding. Empty threats from a desperate man. The following morning, I received a call from Pemberton at 8:30. Mr. Montgomery, we've completed our preliminary review. The discrepancies you identified are significant and concerning. We've scheduled a meeting with Mr. Caldwell this morning at 10. I wanted to inform you that we'll be taking immediate action regarding his accounts. What kind of action? We're revoking the pending loan application immediately. Additionally, his existing credit facility, a commercial line of $890,000, will be called due in full. He has 30 days to repay or face default proceedings. These actions are justified under our loan agreement's material misrepresentation clause, $890,000, due in 30 days. Justin's entire operation ran on that credit line. I appreciate you keeping me informed, I said. Mr. Montgomery, you may have saved this institution from a significant loss. If those falsified documents had been accepted, we'd have been exposed to over $3 million in bad debt. I'll be recommending a formal investigation to our fraud department. After we hung up, I made coffee and waited. Justin's meeting was at 10. By noon, I'd know if he crumbled immediately or tried to fight. The call came at 11:47. Not from Justin, from Sophie. Her voice was tight with worry. Dad, something's wrong with Justin. He came home from a meeting at the bank an hour ago, and he's in our bedroom with the door locked. He won't talk to me. He just keeps saying everything's ruined. Did he tell you what the meeting was about? Something about his business loans. Dad, I'm scared. I've never seen him like this. Can you come over? Maybe he'll talk to you. The irony of that request almost made me smile. I'll be there in 20 minutes. When I arrived, Sophie met me at the door, her eyes red. He's still in there. I can hear him on the phone, but he won't answer when I knock. I walked to their bedroom door, knocked firmly. Justin, it's Orval. Open the door. Silence, then locks, clicking. The door opened a crack. Justin stood there in the same clothes from the night before, unshaven, eyes bloodshot. He looked like he'd aged a decade overnight. You, he said flatly. Of course it's you. Sophie asked me to come. She's worried. He laughed, a harsh, broken sound. Worried. That's rich. You want to know why I'm locked in here, Orval? Because in the last 2 hours, I've called every bank in Nevada, trying to secure emergency financing. You know what they all said? We see here that Pacific Union flagged your account for irregularities. We'll have to pass. Your little phone call didn't just kill my new loan. It poisoned my entire credit profile. What happened at the meeting? He opened the door wider, gestured me inside with bitter sarcasm. Closed the door behind me so Sophie wouldn't hear. What happened? They had everything, Orval. Everything you sent them. Tax returns, real financial statements, side-by-side comparisons with what I submitted. Pemberton laid it all out like a prosecutor. Then he said the magic words. Mr. Caldwell, this constitutes material misrepresentation under federal banking law. We're terminating your credit facility effective immediately and demanding full repayment within 30 days. Additionally, we're forwarding this matter to our fraud investigation team. Fraud investigation. That means federal prosecutors get involved. That means criminal charges. Bank fraud carries up to 30 years in federal prison. His voice cracked. 30 years, Orval. For trying to expand my business. For trying to provide for my family. For lying, I corrected quietly. You didn't try to expand, honestly. You fabricated financial records to deceive a bank into lending you money you couldn't repay. He lunged at me, not to hit, just to grab my shirt, desperation making him physical. I can fix this. I just need time. If you tell the bank it was a misunderstanding, that you made a mistake, I didn't make a mistake. Every number I sent them is accurate. Then loan me the money. His hands tightened on my shirt. $890,000. I'll pay you back with interest. 20% annually. Just save my company. I carefully removed his hands from my shirt. Why would I risk nearly $1 million on someone who lies to banks? Someone who cheats on my pregnant daughter in my own house? His face went from red to white in seconds. Sophie doesn't know about that. If you tell her, the stress could hurt the baby. I'm aware. That's the only reason she doesn't know yet. But Justin, here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell her everything. The affair, the fraud, all of it. In my presence, so she has support. This weekend. And if I don't, then I call Sophie right now and show her the 43 surveillance photos Gloria took, plus receipts for the apartment, the jewelry, the romantic dinners. Your choice. Confess with some dignity, or have it all dumped on her without context. He stumbled backward, hit the edge of their bed, sat down hard, put his head in his hands. When he looked up, tears streaked his face. When did you become so cruel? I'm not cruel. I'm precise. You built a life on lies. To Sophie, to banks, to investors. That structure was always going to collapse. I'm just controlling the demolition to protect my daughter and grandchild from the worst of the debris. A knock at the door. Sophie's voice. Justin, Dad? What's going on? Justin looked at me, eyes pleading one last time. I shook my head. We're talking, I called back. Give us a few more minutes, sweetheart. I lowered my voice. This weekend. My house. 2:00. You tell her everything, or I will. And Justin, if you run, if you try to disappear or manipulate this situation, those surveillance photos go to Sophie, the bank, and the Nevada State Bar, because I'm fairly certain your business partner has no idea you've been committing fraud. What do you want from me? He whispered. The truth. For once in your miserable, fraudulent existence, I want you to tell the complete truth to the woman you married. I walked to the door, paused with my hand on the knob. Oh, and Justin, start packing. Because after this weekend, you won't be welcome in my daughter's life anymore. I opened the door. Sophie stood there, concerned and confused. Everything okay, Dad? I kissed her forehead. It will be, Princess. Justin just has some important decisions to make. I looked back at him, crumpled on the bed. Don't you, Justin? He nodded slowly, defeated. Driving home, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just the cold certainty that I'd done what needed doing. The machine was in motion now. All that remained was watching it grind Justin Caldwell into the consequences he'd earned. That weekend arrived with spring weather, clear skies, temperatures in the mid-60s. Perfect conditions for a family gathering. I'd texted Sophie on Thursday. Would you and Justin like to come for lunch on Saturday? Haven't had you both over in a while. Miss seeing my princess? Her response came within minutes. Yes. What time? Can I bring anything? 2:00. Just yourselves. Justin didn't call to decline. He knew he couldn't. This was the deal. Confess or I would. I spent Saturday morning preparing. Not food. I ordered sandwiches from Sophie's favorite deli. My preparation involved organizing documents. Gloria's surveillance folder, bank statements showing the apartment rental, jewelry receipts, hotel check-ins, and the centerpiece, side-by-side comparisons of Justin's real financial records versus the fraudulent ones he'd submitted to Pacific Union. Everything laid out in sequence, a story told in numbers and photographs. Undeniable, devastating. They arrived at 2 on the dot. Sophie climbed out of Justin's Cayenne wearing a yellow sundress, her baby bump visible now at 19 weeks. She looked radiant, happy, completely unaware that her world was about to implode. Justin followed behind her, moving like a man approaching his execution. Dark circles under his eyes, hadn't shaved properly. His usual confidence replaced with hollow dread. Dad! Sophie hugged me tight. Your garden looks beautiful. Are those new roses? Planted them last month. Come inside, sweetheart. Lunch is ready. We settled in the dining room. I'd set the table normally. Plates, silverware, glasses of water. But in the center, instead of a centerpiece, sat a manila folder. Sophie noticed it immediately. What's that? Something we need to discuss, I said, looked at Justin. Isn't that right? His face went pale. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Sophie glanced between us, confusion creeping into her expression. Dad, what's going on? You're scaring me. I opened the folder, removed the first photograph, Justin and Vanessa kissing outside a restaurant downtown, laid it on the table in front of Sophie. She stared at it, picked it up with trembling fingers. What is this? That's your husband, I said quietly, with a woman named Vanessa Price, taken 3 weeks ago. No. Sophie's voice was small, disbelieving. No, there has to be an explanation. I laid out more photographs. Justin and Vanessa entering a hotel, leaving an apartment building on South Street, shopping together at a jewelry store, walking hand in hand through a park. 43 photographs total. 6 weeks of documented betrayal. Sophie's hands shook. She looked at Justin, eyes pleading for him to deny it, to explain it away. Justin, tell him he's wrong. Tell him this isn't what it looks like. Justin's mouth worked soundlessly. Then, Sophie, I can explain. Don't. My voice cut through his attempt. Don't insult her intelligence with more lies. Tell her the truth. He looked at me with pure hatred, but also defeat. It happened. I'm sorry. It was a mistake. How long? Sophie whispered. 6 months, I answered for him. He's been renting an apartment for her. $3,200 a month. Paid from a business account he listed as consultant housing. He's spent over $14,000 on jewelry for her. None of which you've seen. Sophie stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I can't. Sit down, princess, I said gently. There's more. You need to hear all of it. She sat slowly, mechanically. Tears streamed down her face. I removed the financial documents, laid them out like evidence in a trial. Justin's company, Caldwell Commercial Properties. According to his tax returns filed with the state of Nevada, his gross revenue last year was $1.38 million. Net income of $67,000. I slid the bank application across to Sophie. According to the documents he submitted to Pacific Union Bank for a $2.4 million loan, his gross revenue was $4.7 million, net income of $890,000. Sophie looked at the numbers, not understanding. What does this mean? It means he lied to the bank. He fabricated financial statements to fraudulently obtain credit. It's called bank fraud. It's a federal crime punishable by up to 30 years in prison. Justin lurched to his feet. You don't know that it's fraud. Maybe I made projections. Projections are future estimates, I said coldly. These are supposedly historical records. Tax returns don't contain projections, Justin. They report actual income. You reported $67,000 to the IRS and $890,000 to the bank. For the same year, same company. That's not a projection, that's fraud. Sophie's face had gone white. Justin, tell me this isn't true. I needed the capital to expand. The company has potential. I just needed... So you committed a federal crime? Her voice rose. While I'm pregnant with your child. While we're building a life together. And that's not all, I continued. I called Pacific Union Bank. Spoke with Richard Pemberton, the senior credit manager handling Justin's accounts. Sent him the real financial records. The bank's response was immediate. They revoked the $2.4 million loan application. They also called his existing credit line due immediately, $890,000, due in 30 days, or they proceed with default and fraud charges. I looked at Justin. Tell her what happened after that bank meeting. Tell her what you begged me for in your bedroom last week. Justin's legs seemed to give out. He collapsed back into his chair, head in his hands. I didn't call you to tell you about the affair, Justin, I said, my voice level and calm. I called your banker, Richard Pemberton at Pacific Union. And do you know what he discovered when he reviewed your application? He discovered that you'd falsified records for a $2.4 million loan. Federal bank fraud. 30 years maximum sentence. Justin made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Then his eyes rolled back, and he slid sideways out of his chair, hitting the floor with a heavy thud. Sophie screamed, jumped up, knelt beside him. Justin! Justin, wake up! She looked at me, panicked. Dad, call 911. He's fine, I said calmly. He fainted. It's just the weight of consequences catching up. Give him a moment. She stared at me like I was a stranger. How can you be so calm? He could be hurt. He's not hurt. He's overwhelmed. There's a difference. Justin groaned, eyelids fluttering. He came to slowly, disoriented. Looked around at my dining room ceiling, then at Sophie hovering over him, then at me standing above them both. It's over, he whispered. It's all over. Yes, I agreed. It is. Sophie helped him sit up against the wall, but she didn't touch him with any tenderness, just mechanical assistance. When he was stable, she turned to me. Did you know? Her voice shook. About the affair, about the fraud. How long have you known? I caught him with Vanessa at my lake house 5 weeks ago. I've been investigating since then. 5 weeks, she said it flatly, processing. You knew for 5 weeks and didn't tell me. You're 19 weeks pregnant, Sophie. I needed to be certain before I told you. I needed evidence that couldn't be denied or explained away. And I needed to make sure his house of cards collapsed before he could hurt you worse. Hurt me worse? Her laugh was bitter. How could this possibly be worse? If I'd told you immediately, he would have lied, convinced you I was paranoid, manipulated you into choosing him over me. I've seen it happen before. Abusers, con artists. They're expert manipulators. So I waited until I had proof, until I had institutional validation. The bank confirmed the fraud independently. You can't dismiss that as your father being overprotective. She looked at Justin, still slumped against the wall, then back at me. What happens now? That's up to you, Princess. But you should know, the bank has referred his case to their fraud investigation department. Federal prosecutors will likely get involved. He's looking at prison time unless he cooperates with authorities and makes a plea deal. Justin finally spoke, voice hoarse. Sophie, please. I know I screwed up, but I love you. I love our baby. Don't let him destroy our family. I didn't destroy anything, I said quietly. You did that yourself. Every lie to the bank, every afternoon with Vanessa, every falsified document. I just made sure the truth came to light before my daughter and grandchild were legally entangled with a felon. Sophie stood, backed away from both of us. I can't do this right now. I need to leave. Of course, sweetheart, but not with him. I'll drive you home, or you can stay here. Your old room is ready. I want to go home. My home. Alone. I nodded. I'll drive you. Justin struggled to his feet. Sophie, wait. Don't, she said, her voice like ice. Don't say my name. Don't follow me. Don't call me. She looked at him with an expression I'd never seen on my daughter's face before. Pure contempt. I don't even know who you are. We left him standing in my dining room, surrounded by evidence of his own destruction. In my truck, Sophie cried silently, one hand on her belly, protecting the life growing inside her from the emotional earthquake. I'm sorry, Princess, I said softly. Don't be, she whispered. You saved us. You saved me and the baby from him. The following weeks felt like watching a building collapse in slow motion. Sophie moved back into my house 3 days after the revelation. Didn't take much, her clothes, some personal items. Left everything Justin had bought her. Said she didn't want anything tainted by his lies. She filed for divorce within the week. Nathan Cross recommended a colleague who specialized in family law, Patricia Morales. Sharp as a blade and sympathetic to Sophie's situation. The pregnancy complicated things legally, but Patricia assured us they could navigate it. Nevada's a no-fault divorce state, she explained at our first meeting. We don't need to prove wrongdoing, but given the criminal charges Justin's facing and the documented adultery, we can push for a very favorable settlement, or in this case, protection from his debts. Sophie sat beside me, looking smaller than I'd seen her since childhood. I don't want his money. He doesn't have any anyway. I just want him gone. We can do that, Patricia said. Meanwhile, Justin's world disintegrated piece by piece. His business partner, a man named Derek Santos, who'd invested $200,000 in Caldwell commercial properties, discovered the fraud through the bank's investigation. He immediately filed suit to recover his investment and dissolve their partnership. The bank's fraud department forwarded their findings to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Within 2 weeks, federal prosecutors opened a criminal investigation under Title 18, Section 1344, bank fraud. The penalties, up to 30 years imprisonment and fines up to $1 million. Justin's attorney, an expensive criminal defense lawyer named Marcus Webb, advised him to negotiate a plea deal, cooperate with prosecutors, return whatever money he could, show remorse, maybe reduce the sentence from decades to years. And Vanessa? She vanished the moment Justin's financial troubles became public, blocked his number, moved out of the apartment he'd been paying for, deleted all social media. She'd been dating the successful businessman, not the broke criminal defendant. The irony wasn't lost on me. Justin had sacrificed his marriage for a woman who disappeared the moment his money did. About a month after the revelation, on a Tuesday evening, my doorbell rang. Sophie was upstairs resting. Her pregnancy was progressing normally despite the stress, but her doctor had recommended extra rest. I opened the door to find Justin standing there. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 4 weeks, thinner, hollow-eyed, wearing jeans and a wrinkled shirt instead of his usual designer clothes. Orville, he said, I need to talk to you. Please. I considered closing the door, but curiosity won. 5 minutes, on the porch. Sophie doesn't need to see you. We sat on my porch steps. He stared at his hands. The prosecutors want me to take a plea deal, he said finally. 5 years in federal prison. My lawyer says it's the best I'll get. If I go to trial and lose, I'm looking at 20 years minimum. 5 years seems fair for federal bank fraud, I said neutrally. I can't do 5 years. I'll miss everything. My child being born, first steps, first words. Sophie will move on. I'll come out and have nothing. You should have considered that before committing federal crimes. He laughed bitterly. You must be so satisfied. You destroyed me completely. Everything I built, gone. My marriage, my business, my freedom. All because I made some mistakes with a loan application and had an affair. Some mistakes? I turned to look at him. Justin, you systematically defrauded a financial institution, betrayed your pregnant wife repeatedly, used my property without permission. These weren't mistakes. These were calculated choices. I loved her. I loved Sophie. I was trying to build something for our family. By lying to everyone, including her, that's not love. That's control. You wanted the perfect life, successful business, beautiful wife, social status. But you wanted it without doing the actual work. So you faked it. And now you're facing the consequences. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if I could make it better? For Sophie, I mean. What if I signed away parental rights, agreed to a clean divorce, gave her everything? Would you write a letter to the prosecutor? Ask for leniency? I studied him carefully. Why would I do that? Because it would help Sophie. A 5-year sentence means I'm gone until the kid is 5 years old. But if the prosecutor reduces it to, say, 18 months with good behavior, I'd be out sooner. Less lingering uncertainty for her. She could move on faster. And what do you get out of this arrangement? Less time in prison. A chance to rebuild something when I get out. Not with Sophie, I know that's over. But a chance at a future that isn't completely destroyed. I considered it, the calculating part of my brain that had spent decades analyzing risk and reward. You'd sign complete termination of parental rights? No custody, no visitation, no financial obligation? Yes. Full financial disclosure. Everything you have left, all debts, all assets, completely transparent for the divorce proceedings? Yes. Agreement to Sophie's divorce terms without contest? No fighting over property? No claims on anything? I don't have anything to fight over anymore, Orval. You saw to that. And in exchange, I write one letter to the prosecutor. Not vouching for your character, I won't lie, but stating that you've cooperated in protecting my daughter's interests and returning what you could. He nodded slowly. One letter, that's all I'm asking. I thought about Sophie upstairs, 23 weeks pregnant, trying to rebuild her life. Thought about my grandchild growing inside her, innocent of all this ugliness. Thought about the clean break this would give them. I'll need to see the signed documents first. Parental rights termination, divorce agreement, full financial disclosure. Everything reviewed by Sophie's attorney and approved by her. Once that's done, and only then, I'll write the letter. Thank you, he whispered. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for Sophie, so she can close this chapter completely and focus on being a mother. He stood to leave, then paused. Did you ever actually care about me? When I married Sophie, when I joined the family, did any of it matter to you? I stood too, looked him in the eye. I cared about who I thought you were, the successful young man who made my daughter happy. But that person never existed, did he? It was all performance, carefully constructed lies designed to get what you wanted. Not all of it was fake. Enough of it was, and that's what matters. He walked to his car, not the Cayenne anymore. He'd sold it to pay legal fees. Now he drove a 10-year-old Honda, climbed in, sat for a moment before starting it, then drove away. I went back inside, found Sophie in the kitchen making tea. Was that Justin? She asked quietly. Yes. He came to discuss the divorce terms. What did he want? To make it easier for you, he's going to sign away all parental rights, agree to everything your attorney recommended. In exchange, I'll write a letter to the prosecutors asking them to consider his cooperation. She was quiet for a long moment, stirring honey into her tea. Do you think he deserves leniency? No. But I think you deserve a clean break, and our grandchild deserves to grow up without this hanging over them. 18 months versus 5 years doesn't change what he did, but it might change how quickly you can truly move forward. Sophie nodded slowly. Okay, if you think it's right. I think it's practical. There's a difference." She sipped her tea, looking out the kitchen window at the darkening sky. "I keep thinking about what you said, that you waited to tell me because you needed proof. Were you right to wait?" "I don't know, sweetheart. I did what seemed best at the time. Maybe if I'd told you immediately, things would be different. Better or worse, I can't say." "I'm glad you waited," she said softly. "If you'd just told me about seeing him with her, I might have believed his lies, convinced myself it was a misunderstanding. But seeing everything together, the evidence, the bank investigation, all of it, I couldn't lie to myself. You gave me truth I couldn't ignore. Thank you for that." I put my arm around her shoulders. "You're stronger than you know, Princess. You're going to be an amazing mother." "I hope so," she whispered. "I really hope so." The summer passed in a strange rhythm, half healing, half preparation. Sophie attended therapy twice a week with Dr. Rebecca Chen, a counselor who specialized in trauma recovery. I drove her to appointments, waited in the car reading boat restoration manuals, never asking what they discussed. Some things were private, even between father and daughter. We transformed my spare bedroom into a nursery. Sophie picked soft yellow paint for the walls, gender-neutral, cheerful. I assembled the crib one evening in June, following instructions while Sophie sat in the rocking chair I'd bought, watching. "You're very patient with those instructions," she observed. 38 years reading technical documents. I learned to follow directions precisely. I tightened a bolt, checked it twice. "Besides, my granddaughter deserves a crib that won't collapse." "Granddaughter?" Sophie smiled for the first time in weeks. "You think it's a girl? Call it intuition, or wishful thinking. I've always imagined teaching a little girl to fish." She laughed softly. "You'll teach them either way." "True enough." In mid-July, the divorce was finalized. Patricia Morales met us at the courthouse, a formality since Justin had contested nothing. He'd signed every document placed in front of him: termination of parental rights, complete financial disclosure showing he owned nothing but debt, agreement to the divorce terms without alimony or child support claims. Sophie walked out of the courthouse as Sophie Montgomery again. She'd dropped the Caldwell name like a coat that never fit properly. That evening she cooked dinner, her first time cooking since the revelation. Chicken piccata, her mother's recipe. "I wanted to make something Mom used to make," she said, setting plates on the table. "Feels like reclaiming something." I sampled it. "It's perfect. She'd be proud of you, Princess." Her eyes glistened. "I hope so. I feel like I let her down, marrying someone like Justin. Your mother would say you trusted someone who didn't deserve it. That's not failure. That's being human. Learning to trust the right people again, that's strength." 2 days after the divorce finalized, I went to my bank and established a trust fund. $150,000 from my retirement savings, invested conservatively in index funds designated for my grandchild's education and future. The bank officer, a woman named Susan Petrova, who'd handled my accounts for years, reviewed the paperwork. "This is generous, Mr. Montgomery. It's practical. Good education costs money. This child deserves every advantage." She smiled. "Your grandchild is lucky to have you." Lucky? I thought about that word driving home. Was luck avoiding a father like Justin? Or was it having a grandfather willing to expose ugly truths to protect them? I still wasn't certain I'd made the right choices, only necessary ones. In early August, Sophie's due date approached. We had a hospital bag packed 2 weeks early. I'd learned from her mother's pregnancy that babies arrive on their own schedule. Sophie was enormous now, moving slowly, her belly preceding her through doorways. On a Tuesday afternoon, her water broke while we were watching television. She looked at me with wide eyes. "Dad, it's happening. I'll get the bag. You call your doctor." The drive to renowned regional medical center took 15 minutes that felt like 50. Sophie breathed through contractions, counting like her prenatal class had taught. I gripped the steering wheel and drove carefully, steadily. "You're doing great, Princess," I said at a red light. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "What if I can't do this?" "You can. You will. I'll be right there with you." And I was. 12 hours of labor, Sophie exhausted and determined, holding my hand through the worst contractions. The nurses were professional, kind. Sophie's doctor, Dr. Amanda Torres, who'd seen her through the pregnancy, encouraged her calmly. At 3:17 in the morning, my granddaughter entered the world. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, screaming with outrage at the bright lights and cold air. The nurse placed her on Sophie's chest. My daughter looked down at her baby and sobbed, not from pain, but from overwhelming love. "She's perfect," Sophie whispered. "She's so perfect." I stood beside the bed, looking at this tiny human. She had Sophie's nose, my mother's chin. Her eyes, dark blue like all newborns, squinted against the light. "What's her name?" the nurse asked gently. Sophie looked at me. "Lily Grace Montgomery, after my grandmother." My throat tightened. My mother's name. Mom would be honored. They kept Sophie and Lily in the hospital for 2 days, standard for uncomplicated deliveries. I brought flowers, Sophie's favorite foods, clean clothes, watched my daughter transform from uncertain to confident as she learned to nurse, to change diapers, to read Lily's different cries. When we brought Lily home, I'd already installed the car seat, triple-checked the installation. Sophie sat in back with her daughter for the careful drive to my house. That first week was exhausting. Lily woke every 2 hours to eat. I'd find Sophie in the nursery at 4 in the morning, rocking Lily, singing softly. I'd make coffee, bring it to her, sit in the doorway watching 3 generations of Montgomery women exist together. One night, about a week after Lily's birth, Sophie found me on the back porch. Lily slept in her bassinet inside, monitor crackling with baby sounds. "Can't sleep?" Sophie asked, sitting beside me. "Old man's prerogative. I don't need as much anymore." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "I got a notification today. Justin was sentenced. 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years supervised release. The plea deal went through. How do you feel about that?" "Relieved it's over, that's all. No anger, no satisfaction, just done." She looked at me. "Your letter to the prosecutor helped. Patricia said it made a difference in the sentencing recommendation. I kept my word, nothing more. Everything you've done has been about keeping your word. To Mom, to me, to yourself." She took my hand. "I know this summer has been hard, taking care of me, dealing with all of this. But I want you to know, you saved my life, mine and Lily's. We get to have a future because you had the courage to act." I did what any father would do. No, most fathers would have just told me and let me figure it out. You protected me. Built a case so strong I couldn't deny it, couldn't be manipulated out of believing it. You gave me truth and safety. That's not what any father would do. That's what a great father does. I squeezed her hand. "You're going to be fine, princess. Better than fine. You and Lily have each other, and you have me for as long as I'm around." "That better be a very long time," she said. "Lily needs her grandfather." Inside, the monitor crackled with Lily's waking sounds. Sophie stood, went to tend to her daughter. I sat on the porch a moment longer, thinking about Justin somewhere in a federal facility, beginning 18 months of consequences. Thinking about Vanessa, wherever she'd disappeared to, chasing the next wealthy mark. Thinking about Richard Pemberton and the bank investigation that had validated everything. One phone call. That's all it took to set truth in motion. September arrived with cooler temperatures and changing leaves around the lake. I decided to spend a weekend at the Tahoe house, my first time back since discovering Justin there with Vanessa. Sophie and Lily came with me. We arrived on a Friday afternoon, the lake mirror smooth and blue. I carried Lily while Sophie brought bags inside. The house smelled of pine and clean air, unchanged despite everything that had happened within its walls. "I forgot how beautiful it is here," Sophie said, standing at the window overlooking the water. "Your mother loved this place, said it was where she could breathe." I looked down at Lily, asleep in my arms. "Thought you and this one might like it too." That evening we sat on the dock, Sophie holding Lily, me beside them watching the sunset paint the sky in oranges and purples. The Chris-craft in my workshop was nearly finished, just final varnish coats remaining. "Dad," Sophie said quietly, "thank you. I don't think I've said that enough. Thank you for everything." "You don't need to thank me, sweetheart." "I do, though. Not for destroying my marriage. For saving me from a life with someone I never really knew. You saw through him from the beginning. I saw inconsistencies. Couldn't prove anything until he handed me the proof himself." I watched the water lap against the dock. You know what the strangest part is? I don't feel victorious. I thought I would when it was all done. Thought there'd be satisfaction in watching him face consequences. But there isn't. Just peace. The numbers balanced. The truth came out. Justice happened. Is that enough? More than enough. I looked at her. I have you safe. I have Lily. The rest is just accounting. The next morning, mail arrived, forwarded from my Reno address. Among the bills and advertisements was a letter on Pacific Union, bank letterhead. I opened it, standing in my kitchen. Dear Mr. Montgomery, I'm writing to express the gratitude of Pacific Union Bank for your assistance in identifying fraudulent loan applications submitted by Justin Caldwell. Your diligence in reporting discrepancies and providing documentation prevented significant financial losses to this institution. Our internal investigation, prompted by your information, has since uncovered 3 additional cases of falsified financial statements in commercial loan applications. Your actions have strengthened our verification processes and protected depositors' assets. While we cannot discuss specific details of ongoing investigations, please know that your civic responsibility in this matter exemplifies the partnership between financial institutions and the communities they serve. With appreciation, Richard Pemberton, Senior Credit Manager, Commercial Lending, Pacific Union Bank. I set the letter down, looked out at the lake. 3 additional cases. Justin hadn't been the only one gaming the system. My phone call had done more than protect Sophie. It had exposed a pattern. That afternoon, I worked in my shop while Sophie napped with Lily. The Chris-Craft gleamed on the workbench, restoration nearly complete. 1967 Constellation, classic lines, mahogany hull now smooth as glass. I'd been working on it for 2 years, taking my time, doing it right. I ran my hand along the finished sections. Thought about Justin in that federal facility, probably scared, probably angry, definitely paying for his choices. Thought about the moment he'd fainted in my dining room, his face going white when he realized one phone call had destroyed everything he'd built on lies. I didn't feel satisfaction at that memory, didn't feel triumph, just the quiet certainty that consequences had found their target. Sophie appeared in the doorway, Lily against her shoulder. She wanted to see what Grandpa was doing. I smiled at my granddaughter's sleepy face. Grandpa's finishing a boat. Someday I'll teach you to drive it. She's 1 month old, Dad. Never too early to plan ahead. Sophie laughed, a real laugh, free and light, the first genuinely happy sound I'd heard from her since before Justin's betrayal. We walked back to the house together. 3 generations, the lake spreading out before us. That evening, after Sophie and Lily were asleep, I sat on the dock one final time. Overhead, stars emerged in the darkening sky. The water barely moved, reflecting moonlight. I thought about the phone call I'd made that morning in April. Thought about every decision since, hiring Gloria, consulting Nathan, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment. Thought about Justin's face when the truth emerged, Sophie's tears, the collapse of a fraudulent empire. One phone call to Richard Pemberton. That's all it took to set the dominoes falling. Some people might call what I did revenge. Cold, calculated, ruthless. But revenge implies satisfaction in another's suffering. I didn't want Justin to suffer. I wanted my daughter and grandchild protected from someone who'd built his life on deception. Justice isn't about destruction. It's about restoration, putting things right, making sure the truth wins over lies, consequences over manipulation, reality over illusion. I'd given Justin every opportunity to confess on his own terms. He chose denial. So I chose documentation, evidence, institutional validation he couldn't argue against. The numbers didn't lie. They never do. 4.7 million claimed versus 1.38 million actual. 890,000 net income versus 67,000 reality. 670,000 in hidden debts. Every falsified number, a choice, a risk, a crime, and one phone call exposed all of it. I stood, walked back toward the house. Inside, Sophie slept peacefully, Lily in the bassinet beside her bed. My daughter safe, my granddaughter protected, my family intact despite Justin's best efforts to infiltrate it with deception. In my bedroom, I found the folder I'd kept, all the evidence, all the documentation, photographs of Justin and Vanessa, financial statements, bank applications, Gloria's surveillance reports, everything that had brought truth to light. I carried it to the fireplace, built a small fire, fed the papers into the flames, one by one, watching evidence turn to ash. I didn't need it anymore. Justice had been served. The story was over. The last thing I burned was a photograph, Justin on my dock, taken during a family gathering 2 years ago. He was smiling at the camera, arm around Sophie, the picture of success and happiness, all performance, all lies. I watched his face disappear into flames and felt nothing but peace. Tomorrow, I'd finish varnishing the Chris Craft. Next week, I'd take Sophie and Lily out on the lake for their first boat ride. Next year, I'd teach Lily to say Grandpa. The years would pass, filled with normal life, honest moments, real love. And Justin Caldwell would become nothing but a cautionary tale. The man who built an empire on lies and lost everything to one phone call. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't violence or public humiliation. It's simply letting truth do its work. One call, one choice. Everything else, just dominoes falling in their inevitable pattern. I closed the fireplace screen, turned off the lights, went to bed. Outside, Lake Tahoe reflected stars and moonlight, peaceful and eternal. Inside, my family slept safe. That was enough. That was everything. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.